From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, a case of mistaken firing has led to the most unfortunate loss of 15 lives in Nagaland. As the government makes the statement in Parliament, there are many questions that remain. Here is what happened in Nagaland, and then we debate.
An anti-insurgent operation gone wrong. Bodies piled up on the back of a pickup truck. The firing along the Tiru-Oting road of Mon district in Nagaland, the government says, could be a case of mistaken identity.
अम्बुस के दौरान एक वाहन अम्बुस के स्थान के समीप पहुंचा एवं उसे रुकने का इशारा किया गया। रुकने की बजाय वाहन द्वारा उस जगह से तेजी से निकलने का प्रयास किया गया, जिसके उपरांत इस आशंका की वाहन में संदिग्ध विद्रोही जा रहे थे, वाहन पर गोली चलाई गई।
Civilians and soldiers who were injured as an aftermath of the firing continue to receive treatment at the hospital. One soldier has succumbed. What followed on Sunday was a riot-like situation. The Assam Rifles has been forced to fire in self-defense. One life was lost on Sunday.
The Assam Rifles, in a statement issued earlier in the day, said that an inquiry at the highest level will look into this unfortunate incident. The statement also reads that an Assam Rifles post at Mon came under heavy attack by a mob of over 300 people, but they responded in a restrained manner.
Currently here in Mon district, Section 144 has been imposed, and the Nagaland government has also, through a notification, banned mobile internet, data services as well as bulk SMS to curb the circulation of inflammatory pictures, videos or any sort of texts.
While the Home Minister of India has set the record straight,
सेना की 3 कोर मुख्यालय द्वारा एक प्रेस वक्तव्य जारी किया गया है, जिसमें निर्दोष नागरिकों की दुखद मृत्यु के घटनाक्रम पर अत्यधिक दुख सेना द्वारा व्यक्त किया गया है। सेना द्वारा इन दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण मृत्यु के कारणों की जांच उच्चतम स्तर पर की जा रही है और कानून के अनुसार समुचित कार्यवाही की जाएगी।
the Nagaland Chief Minister attending the funeral of the civilians called for AFSPA to be revoked.
नहीं, हम मिनिस्टर से बात किया, वो उन लोग का बहुत सीरियस से ले रहा है। उन लोग को इस केस का 11 लाख दिया और भी 5 लाख दिया और इंजर्स को 50,000 दिया। एसपीए तो ये जो हम लोग भी हमेशा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया से पूछता है ये कि ये रिमूव करो। दिस इज blackened the image of our country.
The Chief Minister of Meghalaya has joined chorus.
It's not that we just decided this, in the last few days. So from our leader, late Mr. P.S. Sangma's time, we have opposed the Armed Forces Special Power Act. So it's been a stand for a very long time. So it's not that we just did it just now.
Remember, these placards that they are holding is their only demand now. And in fact, the anguish against the armed forces is too intense right now, and as we are witnessing various messages on these placards held by these women who are right now mourning the death of the 14 civilians.
Very sensitive situation in Nagaland. In the last 72 hours, 14 civilians and 1 soldier have been killed. The situation is very tense in the Mon town of Nagaland after the counterinsurgency operation, and questions must be asked. I'd like to welcome V. Fushika Aumi, his former president of the Naga Students Federation from Dimapur. Mr. Aumi, welcome. Also with us today is Mr. N. Krom, he's Secretary General of the Naga Rights Movement. Welcome, Mr. Krom. We have Professor Xavier Mao, he's a political analyst and professor of the Northeast Hill University. He's live from Shillong in Meghalaya today. Professor Mao. I can see on the screen my friend Zarir Hussain, Chief Managing Editor of the leading channel of the Northeast News Live. General G.D. Bakshi, needs no introduction. General Sanjay Kulkarni, former DG Infantry. Tuhin Sinha of the BJP. And I'll be joined in just a minute by some more guests from Dimapur. First of all, welcome. Now, what's the sentiment on the ground about what has happened? May I ask you, Mr. Krom, can you hear me? I'm sure you've seen the sentiment of the Home Minister, Amit Shah, in Parliament. There is an admission that this was a terrible, terrible mistake. And there is deep regret over what happened. What is the feeling on the ground? Mr. Krom.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Arnab. Well, yes, as you said, we can see sentiments. The only thing is, how much can we trust the government, whether it is the Prime Minister or the Home Minister for that matter? For just too long, Naga people have been fooled. And so it is difficult to just make comments based on sentiments alone. We need to see action.
And if I may ask, what action, Mr. Aumi? Can you hear me, Mr. Aumi? That was Mr. Krom from Kohima. From Dimapur, Mr. Aumi, what action is it that people want to see?
Out here, the general public, the Nagas in general, wish to withdraw or ask the central government to repeal the Armed Forces Special Power Act, which is a draconian law and against the innocent civilians.
And how will that help? The repeal of the AFSPA has come to the fore again after this unfortunate incident. But there's a volatile nature on the ground. Is that practical to do? Let me get in General Sanjay Kulkarni, former DG Infantry. Dr. Kulkarni, the call is for the repeal of the AFSPA. You heard that.
Arnab, at the very outset, what has happened is extremely sad. It shouldn't have happened. There is no denying the fact it shouldn't have happened. But
these kind of incidents occur primarily because of a mistaken identity, because there would have been some inputs of the movement of militants or some anti-national moves from there, such an incident. Otherwise, at the time when it has occurred, such an incident is, well, as I said at the very outset, it's highly, highly sad. We cannot just, I have no words to express that such loss of life are definitely regrettable. Having said that, the problem is only one. How do we? The state is declared disturbed.
And once the state is declared disturbed, only then do the Armed Forces Special Powers Act are implemented. Now, should the state not be declared disturbed, earlier it would be by the state. Since 72 onwards, I think the center has the power to declare a state as disturbed. And the kind of insurgencies that are happening and the kind of, now that we have China over there, and the kind of movement that is taking place, I think we ought to be careful. The people there now need to be taken into confidence that all these activities that are taking place there should not be instigated by anybody from across the border, because there are peace talks going on. Everybody wants peace. I have served there. I know, being in Kohima and Zakama, so I know what exactly it means. Therefore, my recommendation should be, let there not be a knee-jerk reaction to anything. Yes, this Armed Forces Special Powers Act had been repealed earlier in Tripura and Nagaland, not very late. It is implemented. It is there in Assam, and it is there in Arunachal Pradesh, except for some districts. It is there in Manipur, other than again some districts.
I hear you. Let me get Mr. Patton in. He's a social activist from Dimapur. Mr. Patton, General Kulkarni, just 1 minute, please. We will fix your audio also in the meantime. Mr. Patton, can you hear me? This is Arnab here.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear now.
Yeah, Mr. Patton, first of all, may I say, and all of us at the Republic Network feel really, really strongly about this, that those who are responsible for the civilian killings cannot get a clean chit. I think this should be made very clear, and I think that is also what I'm hearing from all our friends in the Northeast, that they cannot get a clean chit, and they cannot take the cover, to get a clean chit. But having said that, Mr. Patton, there is also great concern that the situation in Nagaland is volatile. Things are not completely okay. There have been attacks on the armed forces. Assam Rifles Jawans have been killed in the past as well, and the NSCNK has claimed responsibility. Army Jawans have been targeted by terrorist groups. Unidentified terrorists have fired indiscriminately on army columns. We need to be extremely careful. The Mon area is identified as the infiltration and exfiltration route for the NSCNK. So sometimes the army is also on extremely high alert here, and this is, though what has happened is wrong. Repealing the Armed Forces Special Powers Act may be a knee-jerk reaction. That's the sentiment. What's your response, Mr. Patton?
Yes, Arnab, the repeal for AFSPA is a demand which is not new, and then it's a very long-standing demand that we have had, and like you have rightly mentioned, with the peace talks in process and the peace accord being signed, things were looking towards a much better horizon. And then this thing happened, and moreover, like we have met in the like Northeast festivals in Delhi, the international Hornbill Festival was going around, and we had international guests, national tourists around, and then this thing playing out is has really sent shock waves down the spines, and then even international networks has picked up this this very sad incident, and so not all of us, or generally all the time, it's the civilians who suffer because of this AFSPA, this Armed Forces Special Power Act.
All I'm trying to say, sir, is a word. I would be very grateful, sir, a word about the soldier whose throat was slit. The soldiers who are in hospital now, very grievously injured. I don't want to take the name of the soldier, sir. I know his name. His throat was slit with a dah, sir. And again, sir, extremely sad for the loss of all lives, civilian or military. Yeah. And the last thing about the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, I understand, I heard the CM of Nagaland saying that, this should not have been their Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Sir, it's not just about the disturbed area that General Kulkarni beautifully explained. It's also about the fact that the army does not go anywhere unless it is invited, sir. And the army is there because the civilian leadership has failed. Should the civilian leadership, tell New Delhi, remove the army. If there is no army, there will be no need for the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, sir. There will be no need. Just say that we don't need the army in Nagaland. The Nagaland police is good enough to take care of all the law and order situation. Because when the army functions, an army is an offensive force.
Should I get him to respond?
It's not a defensive force, it's an offensive force.
Should I get him to respond, please? I think fair we get him to respond, and I want Professor Mao also to come in. I think one thing which comes across Mr. Patton, Mr. Krom, Mr. Raumi, is that I don't know how to say this to you, that whether you're in Delhi or Guwahati or Dimapur or Kohima today, can we all say that we are devastated at what has happened? And Gaurav, I want to tell you, there is, whether it's a soldier or whether it is the 14 civilians, we feel terrible at what happened, but we're only concerned that things should not turn into a flashpoint. It should not. It should not. But I'd like if you want to respond directly, Mr. Patton, because he responded to you.
Yes. So, thank you very much for your civil approach now, Major Gaurav, and I do stand with a little more respect for you after you have made it clear that you do not condone the act where the civilians were, shot. Because in the earlier afternoon comment, it came across like you were so insensitive towards the people saying they were carrying weapons. Weapon is a weapon. So it did hurt our sentiments then. But now that you have clarified, I am okay with that. Now, secondly, from my own very experience, as an activist who was educated from DU, from Jamia, and I have been championing the cause of racism in Delhi. So when I was attending an international conference, when I mentioned in the past times, when children of my age were learning how to walk straight, upright on their 2 feet, we were being taught how to lie down on the ground when there's fighting. That was the situation then. But then and now, the situations have really changed. Now, we have time and again requested that the disturbed area tax should be removed. Nor do we need the AFSPA. Situations have normalized, is normalizing. And having said that, a lot of my friends from across the country, they always want to inquire from me whenever they want to travel to Nagaland, that it's a disturbed area. Is it safe? And ironically, what I have to say is, yes, our peace has been disturbed. Our lives have been put on the wire in a lot of times, and also we have been subjugated to a kind of marginal feeling because all the time civilian casualties, we become the collaterals for no fault of ours. And hence, and just one more point, where even the Honorable Chief Minister of Meghalaya, Conrad, who is unbiased and is unprejudiced in this matter because he's not from Nagaland, but he himself has also come out in support in the evening, where he has very clearly mentioned that AFSPA has been counterproductive for the Northeast region at least.
But okay,
and
here's a little counter, Mr. Patton. I want General Bakshi to respond. I want Zahir to come in to tell us what exactly happened, And our political guests, I've deliberately, if you've noticed today, I've kept our political guests to wait. We have Tuhin of the BJP, we have Riju of the Trinamool, but I'm sure they don't mind first hearing every side out. First of all, I want to hear, General Bakshi, if you don't mind, I'll just get a quick thing from Zarir first. Zarir, what exactly happened? People are still trying to get a sense of how this catastrophe, this calamity, this tragedy has taken place.
First of all, it's a terrible, terrible news, which in the first place shouldn't have happened. What we understand is that there was a pickup van carrying about 20-odd rat hole miners. They were daily wage earners who were doing this rat hole mining in some pockets. They were going, and this army picket, Assam Rifles picket, tried to stop. And apparently, as the Union Home Minister was making a statement that they didn't pay heed to the soldiers, and then the firing. But the moot point is, it was not dark. It was during the day itself. It was not sundown, around 3:34. So the question of the security forces firing on a pickup van, in your visuals, you are seeing the pickup van. I think that is it is gross. It's gross. So the point is now, but there are a couple of things which as a journalist has come to my mind, notice that in the past, the army, or for that matter, the government, the central government, have never, ever admitted to this kind of botched kind of encounters. But this is probably the first time when both the security forces and the central government, in no uncertain terms, have admitted that there was something wrong. And as our Naga friends have been telling, that there is some kind of a trust deficit. So how to build up the trust? A fast court of inquiry is I think the best way to basically assuage the feelings of the Naga people, or for that matter, the entire Northeast, which is still in a state of shock, I would say. Because in the past, we had seen this kind of incidents of fake encounters in Manipur and other places. But at that point in time, there was the mobile phones and all these things were not there. So we didn't get information, or we didn't see the visuals or clips. But this time, you and we had telecast almost even from Mon, in matter of minutes, we are getting video clips and we could see what's happening in that particular area, although it's very remote and not accessible, or mobile outages were there, internet disruptions were there. Still, we could get those. So the first and foremost thing I would say is a fast court of inquiry, and some action needs to be taken so that there is this feeling of trust between the people of the Northeast and the mainland India.
But there must be a huge... What happens when something like this happens, Zarir, is that trust is a big casualty. It's easier said than done. Trust becomes a big casualty. Yes. General Bakshi, what, what's, is there a healing which can happen here? We don't want both sides to take very hard, diametrically opposed positions. And also, General Bakshi, it's a very sensitive time in the peace process. Your thoughts, please, General Bakshi.
Thank you, Arnab. First of all, I think this is a profoundly tragic incident. Deeply, deeply tragic. And my heart goes out to the families of the people who have been killed. Military, civil, a life is a life. I have been at the receiving end of these kind of operations for most of my 37 years of military life. I have been on both the sides, so I know exactly what it means. May I just provide a bit of context? There has been a ceasefire in Nagaland. Things have been returning to normal. We are all yearning to see that it comes to an end, this decades-long conflict. In Mizoram, we were able to bring it to a conclusion Fortunately for us, there was just one main insurgent group whose writ ran. So once we had imposed enough attrition, our government, our other agencies reached out to it, and there was that accord, and peace has returned there fully. Here there are so many splinter groups, and despite all efforts, we've not been able to get to it. Let me give you the latest developments. As you are all aware, sometimes when the problem started on the India-China border, the Chinese press, there were statements to the effect that we can do things in the northeast to sort of make India pay. And lo and behold, then we have the tragic ambush in which a colonel, his wife, his 8-year-old son, they were killed along with 6 boys. The local troops were under tremendous pressure to get the perpetrators, those who had so ruthlessly gunned down a family. I mean, what harm had that child and that woman done? And they were under pressure to sort of, restore the situation. They got input, from what I have understood so far, that a particular vehicle is coming with these insurgents. They laid an ambush, and when they asked that vehicle to stop, as I understand, the vehicle did not stop and just tried to go through, force its way through the checkpoint. And therefore they opened fire with very tragic consequences. Very tragic consequences. All that I would appeal is, I don't think you should presume from this that the whole bunch of military people in uniform are a bunch of crazed killers just trying to shoot at anything that moves.
Yeah.
Please, I have been there. Our boys have families too. The decision dilemma that the boy on the ground faces is terrible. After all, the insurgent is not wearing a uniform. He is in civil clothes. You have seconds to decide whether he is an insurgent or not an insurgent. Sometimes you falter, you are dead. And if you shoot prematurely without establishing identity, I mean, you have created a situation like this for yourself. And you will be taken over the coals. So, I think there is a need to understand. The Assam Rifles initially had most of the people from the northeast. And we deliberately did that because they would have their feelings, their heart in the right place, etc., etc. They would not be under that sense of siege. The cause-effect relationship must not be misunderstood. Now about AFSPA.
But can I, General Bakshi?
You see, the AFSPA
can I get a response from Professor Mao to your first point? The point that General Bakshi makes, Professor Mao, is that he says, A, there is high pressure on the forces in the region. They're operating in a situation of stress. This was a case of mistaken identity. But it should not be allowed to flare up beyond this. And he's asking for empathy for the forces also. Professor Mao.
Yes, Mr. Arnab, definitely Mr. General Bakshi has a point. Even the army colonel, his wife, his son have been killed brutally. Definitely my deep sadness at the tragic loss of a lady and a young boy. Definitely, we have to be equally sympathetic towards them. But my point is,
moral and peaceful coexistence, live and let live principles have to be the guiding principle unless
that is the guiding principle, such tragic incidents will keep recurring, and revenge, counter-revenge, the cycle of violence breeds violence, will go on perpetuating. Therefore, this is not the solution. Therefore, the solution will be Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which empowers even of the rank of Havildar, non-commissioned officer, arbitrarily arrest and arbitrarily even shoot under any suspicious circumstances. All this should go. This is highly contradictory to the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights and various international human rights covenant to which India is also a signatory. Moreover, Human Rights Act of 1993, and from this, the National Human Rights Commission, and each state also has its own
Human Rights Commission has been set up. So all these are highly contradictory to each other. Therefore, AFSPA,
Armed Forces Special Powers Act,
in a moral, in a democratic, civilized society. Then how to deal with the insurgent? That is the question to be answered. Well, the state police can be well trained. They have to be provided with sophisticated weapons, like even in Chhattisgarh. Their armed forces, the army, are not at all deployed. Therefore, in a similar manner, even in the northeast, can be deployed by the trained policemen, and other humanistic services can be rendered. And today, even the Naga insurgents, as per the ongoing peace talk, they have not insisted on the complete sovereign independent state or independent nation. That has been already given up. Therefore, in the context of such happening, it is highly improper to have such a harsh and severe law, which is highly inhuman and immoral. It is like a cobweb. Unless you remove the spider, the cobweb, even if you keep cleaning, it will keep occurring again and again. Therefore, the broad guiding principles of peaceful coexistence and from the Indian Upanishad of the whole universe, our tiny planet, is a home, a family for everybody, not only in India, but even around the world. Such a humane, moral, spiritual principle should be the guiding force, guiding light for any society, any civilized society. And not only that, but even the various other acts which are inhuman have to be removed, and the state force has to be strengthened.
Professor Mao?
Yes, please.
Professor Xavier, if I may, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
You made a very strong intervention. I most politely would like to humbly disagree with you. Principally because I am not certain that the NSCN groups who are opposed to the peace process, some of whom say they are not anti-talks, I am not sure that we can trust the NSCNK. I am not sure. And all I would say to you, and maybe General Bakshi will respond, that let us actually use this opportunity to push the peace process, bring everybody on the negotiating table, talk things out on the ground, not drag it. Sir, I can only tell you this. Previous governments, when I began my career, it's to cover the Home Ministry. Previous governments in the center dragged the peace process almost interminably. And I say right now, bring the peace process together. Don't drag it. But General Bakshi wants to respond to you. General Bakshi, please, quickly, strong interventions. Riju, sorry for making you wait. Tuin, I'm coming to you and Riju after this. General Bakshi.
No. I fully go along with the learned professor for the need for humanity, for the need for compassion. But, these incidents do not occur, where the things are normal. Where an officer, his wife and his child are killed, where 6 soldiers are shot brutally, dead, where people are operating with Kalashnikov, AK-47 rifles, rocket grenade launchers, hand grenades and machine guns, and sometimes mortars and other weaponry, then I'm afraid it is not a normal human condition. The whole, the whole fabric of law and order has been uprooted. All that I'm trying to say is,
Mr. Army responding to you, General Bakshi.
I just finished.
General Bakshi, Mr. Army responding to you from Dimapur. No.
At first place that
I just wanted to point out about the
to me,
AFSPA.
So I did not explain much, but at this hour of sadness, when innocent villagers' lives has been brutally gunned down in the broad daylight, no amount of justification can heal a wound. Over the past 60, 70 years, Nagas are undergoing these similar brutalities from the Indian security forces. If you correctly remember, since we have two generals of Indian security forces here in the Tibet tonight, I would say that if I'm wrong, correct me, but Nagas has experienced torture, rape, frisking, concentrations, wrapping in our own charges, not sparing the charges. And then, there are lots of incidences which went unreported. It's almost a daily affairs. And I think if you try to justify from different angles on the militarization point of view, I think it will be rubbing salt in a wound. At this juncture, we wanted to talk about the Armed Forces Special Power Act, which is nothing but, to me, it's an understanding, it's just nothing, a replica, a copy-pasting of a Rollouts Act of a British Empire. I believe that Indian, I understand this force very well, and where the security forces in Nagaland have been operating under this draconian law being empowered to them, and extrajudicial killings still going on, fake encounters going on.
Mr. Army, General Bakshi wants to respond to you. General Bakshi wants to respond to you, Mr. Army. Yeah.
Incident is a matter that I think I should be given enough time. I have been waiting all this long. On 4th December, I think it's not a case of shooting down civilians on self-defense. What is the question of self-defense when they are trying to cover up their own crime? I think it's within a matter of hour, two shooting takes place. And I think there's a number of witnesses there. See, if you come to kill somebody, or if I go to kill somebody, and if somebody also kill me, will I make this as a justification point? That is one thing we wanted to talk about. Here, human rights violations are going on randomly, and the Nagas are hard with that. It's almost like waging undeclared war. I think this is hurting a lot.
Yeah,
and I think the general public felt that
but by this logic, Mr. Raumi, there's just one point. I get your views on AFSPA, Mr. Raumi, but I just want to bring to your attention, and I want to get Riju and Tuhin before it's too late. One, Home Minister has clarified. Second, Army 3 Corps has stated regret. Third, SIT has been formed. Fourth, FIR has been registered. Fifth, Assam Rifles has backed the investigation. But there are security considerations. Riju, I want your take on it. I just want to tell you, Riju, I feel it should not be politicized. Very sensitive. And thank you for your patience. Riju first and then Tuhin.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Goswami. It is not a political matter. It is a matter of the issues of the people. And let me tell you, first, my party's stand is that Trinamool Congress, Mamata Banerjee and Abhishek Banerjee stands in complete solidarity with the people of Nagaland and Nagaland itself. It's a bad day. what can I say? You know, it is one of the worst incidents of massacre this country has ever witnessed. But my heart goes out to all the family of the bereaved. My deepest condolences to everybody, including the Jawan and his family who has, gone through this ordeal. But all in all, the conclusion is that it is a complete failure of intelligence, number one. The NEDA that was formed under Mr. Amit Shah, whose purpose was to maintain peace and harmony in Northeast states, have failed completely. AFSPA, the Special Powers Act, like everybody debated, and I have heard for the last 45 minutes, the Northeast does not need it, and it does not have a place in a civil society. So please, the central government needs to take action and take AFSPA back. Fourth, it is an attack on the federal structure as well. And this happens when, even though law and order is a state subject, they are not in tandem with the border security forces. And this is what is the main crux of the matter is. And finally, again, I'll give you 3 incidents, Mr. Goswami, in the last 9 months. Shital Kuchi, Kuch Bihar, 4 people gunned down. Assam Mizoram border, police fighting between each other, 6 killed, and now Nagaland. There is a serious situation in this country which has exposed the incompetence of the Home Minister, and I think he should be answerable to the people of this country and to the Parliament.
What about the Assam Rifle Unit commanding officer Colonel Tripathi, his son, wife, and 4 Jawans being killed in Manipur, a place where AFSPA is still very much in place? You forgot to mention that. Our heart goes out to it. Our heart goes. I mentioned the Jawan who lost his life today. Every death is mournful. But what happened here cannot be justified with another incident, which is also a crime. Every perpetrator, whether it is civilian, whether it is military, should be brought to book, and people should be accountable. Yeah. 1 minute. I'll get Tuhin to respond, and Mr. Patton, coming to you after Tuhin, please. Tuhin.
Arnab, this is one of the saddest tragedies in recent history. There are no words to denounce it, condemn it. The government has already expressed its deepest condolences and regret to the family, and I personally apologize to the family members of all those killed in this incident. But I still feel that nobody should unnecessarily drag AFSPA into it. AFSPA was brought in 1958 by an Act of Parliament. In 1971, certain very draconian provisions were added by certain northeastern states. So we have had nothing to do with it. Unlike, on the other hand, in the last 7.5 years, in 3 states of the northeast, Tripura, 9 districts of Arunachal Pradesh, and in Meghalaya, AFSPA has been removed. So the decision to remove AFSPA should not be based on emotions. It should be purely based on a realistic evaluation of the prevailing security situation in the state at a given point of time. Now, finally, unlike on 5th March 1996, when the then government had bombed Aizawl on suspicion of subversive activities leading to massive destruction, I think our government has shown a lot of integrity. Honorable Home Minister has shown a lot of integrity, sincerity, and honesty in accepting that there was a mistake. It is an episode of mistaken identity. And I can assure you that stringent action will be taken against anybody found guilty, and compensation will be announced for the
Riju and Mr. Patton, quickly. First, Riju, quick little time, yes. Not much time, but first Riju, yes, and then Mr. Patton.
A quick rebuttal. A quick rebuttal. We have a trust deficit. We don't trust the central government. We demand an independent judicial inquiry into the matters to give justice to the family of the bereaved. And secondly, we are very unlucky, Mr. Goswami. You know why? Because when the entire debate and the entire country is showing their sympathy towards the Northeast states, our godlike Prime Minister is having tea with the Russian Premier and not one word of sympathy from him. So how unlucky we are.
Okay, Mr. Patton. Mr. Patton.
He has already spoken on the issue. That should suffice for you. What is dragging the Prime Minister into it when the Prime Minister has a pre-scheduled meeting with his Russian counterpart?
Is it not Indian citizens to him?
Mr. Patton.
Indian citizens dying and Prime Minister is not bothered.
Home Minister is enough. People, please don't play politics.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. Patton, Riju and Tuhin.
Yeah. Please don't play politics here for the sake of the bereaved families and those innocent civilians who were slain. 1, 2, kindly don't juxtapose the incident that happened in Manipur to try and justify what has happened here, derived of human values, because it happened in 2 different states. And ironically, Mr. Khatnai Konyak, Khatnai Konyak was also killed in that same ambush. He was also a resident of Mon, and in his funeral, you know what his father said? I have given one son to the service of this nation. So please, don't think that all of us are anti, like military, or we generalize everyone is the same. What we are only saying is kindly remove those elements and bring justice. That's all. Please don't mistake us.
Absolutely. There has to be justice. General Bakshi wants to say something. General Bakshi and Mr. Krom, General Bakshi, and then Mr. Krom wants to add in something. Yeah. General Bakshi. Very briefly, General Bakshi.
Arnab, the much reviled Armed Forces Special Powers Act, please understand the context. When the local police has failed, when paramilitary forces have failed, it is then that the army is called in as a last resort. To where the police and paramilitary have failed, you expect the army to go in without the legal cover that the CRPC gives to the police. If a police officer acts in good faith, as per the provisions of the CRPC, you cannot take action against him in a cause. He has to operate in a legal framework.
Mr. Krom. Sure, I heard you.
Yes, Arnab. Yes, Arnab, thank you for giving me this time. But I'm not here to justify or to condemn what has happened. And we're not just talking about what happened in Mon or in Manipur or a few months ago. We seem to have forgotten what has happened in the last 60, 70 years. We seem to have forgotten why there is a peace process. We seem to have forgotten why there has been conflict. So we're not here to justify or condemn. Well, I'm also not here even to talk about the contents of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. It is not the act that is killing people. It is the attitude of the government, the attitude of the uniformed persons. So in conflict situations, many things happen. But unless the human person has a good attitude towards life and towards fellow human beings, argument for the sake of justification or condemnation will not take us anywhere. So I think the attitude of these
I hear you.
The worst.
No.
Pardon?
No, Mr. Krom, we, Mr. Krom, we, you, me, Mr. Rao, me, General Kulkarni, we are all proud citizens of this great country. Let's not deride the country. We can discuss the issue, but let's not deride our own country. I want General Kulkarni to respond.
I think we're different people. Otherwise, we will not be treating each other in this manner.
No, I don't think we are. No, I don't think we are. No, I don't think we are. And let me tell you one thing, sir. Let me tell you one thing, sir. Let me tell you one thing, sir.
You're just talking about one.
No. Let me tell you one thing, sir. Please, No. Please, let me tell you one thing, sir. If all of us can simply focus on bringing the country together, we will find a solution. Yes. But I would like to tell you just one thing, Mr. Krom. The starting point should be in the fact that we are all proud citizens of this great nation. We will find a solution. We will talk to each other, not at each other. We will find a solution. And I can tell you one thing, Mr. Krom, in all the years that the Congress party was in power in this country, tell me when the Home Minister in less than 12 hours stood up in the floor of Parliament and admitted such a grave mistake. The admission is the first step. Now we must find a solution, and we will find a solution. There is no doubt I have, we will find a solution. General Kulkarni, and if this has highlighted the need for a solution, if the recent killings on both sides of army officers, army personnel, and this tragic incident are highlighting the need for a solution, I think that's, let us see where the messaging takes us. General Kulkarni, quick last word, please. Quick last word, General Kulkarni.
No doubt Arnab, no doubt the solution will be found. The solution will be found. We have to talk to each other. We are talking to each other, and there is no denying the fact. I have served in Nagaland. Lovely people. I'm extremely fond of them. I regret such an incident that has occurred. But
stays in peace and is prevented from any insurgency that might just crop up from across the Nagaland. And since the boundaries are common, we have to be very, very sure that nobody is able to interfere into the peaceful functioning of Nagaland. That's all I could say.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And one thing from our side, and this goes out to all our panelists in Shillong, in Kohima, in Dimapur. I would tell you that we will, at the Republic Network, devote a lot of effort into reporting from the ground, so the voices of the people of Nagaland also come out as strongly as they should. That's what we will try to do from our side. I thank you very much for joining us all. I'm also grateful to Tuhin and Riju. Usually they speak more today for hearing out all our panelists so patiently. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Good night and goodbye.